Hello, welcome to the Mythology Manifest. We're now in week 7 of lockdown in the UK, and the Prime Minister answered a question yesterday using a classics analogy, which is surely good for the popularity of classics, right? Except for the fact that it could be interpreted in a completely different way to how he meant it. That myth was in fact Hades and Persephone. Boris said that, like Persephone, we should all be able to step back into the light. So, I'm going to tell this myth for my video today. See if you can spot where Boris got the interpretation wrong. This story begins with the goddess Demeter, who was the goddess of the harvest and agriculture, and she is being pursued by Zeus, once again trying to be unfaithful to Hera. Demeter tried to refuse, but it was no good, and she fell pregnant by Zeus. When Demeter gave birth, it was to a baby girl, whom she named Persephone. I bet Persephone struggled to find her name on the keyrings. Persephone meant bringer of destruction, and when the baby with the terrifying name grew up, she became a goddess. The goddess of something that really matched with her name. Flowers and seasons, especially spring. Persephone grew into a beautiful young woman, who is usually depicted in a field with flowers in her hair. By the time she was fully grown, the god of the underworld, Hades, had spotted her and decided he wanted her as a wife and queen for the underworld. Hades went to Zeus and asked if he could have Persephone's hand in marriage, as no other goddess wanted to marry him, as they found him scary and he was always surrounded by a smell of dead people. With Persephone being his daughter, Zeus refused Hades' request and told him to go back to the underworld. Hades bowed to Zeus and left Olympus, but he did not return to the underworld straight away. He tracked down Persephone to a field where she was walking and picking flowers with her mother, Demeter. He heard Demeter say that she had a meeting with Zeus, and she disappeared in a godly light. With Demeter now gone, Hades went over to Persephone and introduced himself. He saw in her eyes that she was scared of him and found his power intimidating. He told her not to be afraid and then got on one knee and proposed to her. She politely declined and began to walk away. Now, before you judge Hades on what he does next, please try and remember that he had never been loved, and so didn't understand why Persephone didn't love him as he did her. In my mind, his love was actually infatuation, but he wasn't to know that. He ran after Persephone and grabbed her around the waist with one arm. With another arm, he used his godly power and transported them both to the underworld, where he did force her into marriage. In Roman mythology, the kidnapping is a lot more aggressive and incredibly brutal, which is why I chose to tell the Greek version. When they were gone, Demeter returned and was horrified to see that her daughter wasn't where she left her, as Persephone was not one to wander off. In fact, Persephone wasn't one to do any wrong in Demeter's eyes. Demeter was also worried about her daughter when she saw that the flowers they had been picking had been thrown on the ground in an incredibly disrespectful way, which Demeter knew Persephone would never do. I have made Demeter sound a little bit like a Karen in this video, so I apologise about that. Anyway, in fear of what happened to her daughter, Demeter ran back to Mount Olympus and demanded to speak to the manager. And so, Zeus came to her and asked her what was wrong. She explained that Persephone had disappeared and that she believed someone had taken her. Now, me and you could have put things together quite easily, but like his father, Zeus was described as powerful, not intelligent, and he had completely forgotten about his conversation with Hades. Zeus and Demeter sent out every resource they had to try and find their daughter, and in her distress, Demeter forgot to do her godly duties, and so all the crops on the earth died, the sun stopped shining, and frost and snow covered the ground. This went on for 6 months, until someone had the clever idea that no one had thought of, which was to go and see the sun titan Helios, as he was in the sky all day and saw everything, so probably saw what happened to Persephone. They asked Helios, and he explained what had happened with Hades in the field. Demeter was ready to storm down to the underworld and demand to talk to Hades' manager, but Zeus stopped her and instead sent Hermes, the messenger of the gods, to bring Persephone back to Olympus. Hermes did as he was told and brought Persephone back from the underworld. She had just reached the arms of her mother when Hades appeared as well. He said that Persephone had to return to the underworld because she had eaten pomegranate seed there, and that meant she had to stay there by law. Demeter began yelling about how she would never let her daughter go back, when Zeus interjected with his one good idea. The king of the gods asked Persephone how many seeds she had eaten. The answer was 6, and so Zeus said that for 6 months of every year, Persephone would have to leave the light of the world and go back to the darkness of the underworld. Demeter was devastated, but Persephone was not. She said that in the 6 months she had already been down there, she had learned to love Hades and would happily be queen of the underworld for half of each year. Demeter then said that for the time Persephone was in the underworld, nothing would grow and it would be cold, and that is how seasons came to be. Spring and summer are when Persephone is on the earth and Demeter is happy, and autumn and winter are when she is in the underworld and Demeter is sad. And that's the conclusion of that myth. So when Boris said that like Persephone we must step into the light, he seemed to forget that she has to go back to the darkness at some point, so probably not the best analogy, but hey, at least he didn't use Phaethon as an example. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, subscribe, or follow this channel's Twitter page, which I have left a link to in the description below. Let's keep classics alive. I'll see you next time on the Mythology Manifest.